Greetings, Phantom Travelers. Today we're going to be working on my M825 ton. You can see it's kind of in the middle of a bunch of projects, and yes, I've got a lot of other stuff around here. I'm sure you'll see that eventually. So today we're working on the door gaskets. So I'm trying to make this into a bit of a quieter cab. My goal is to try to make this into a camper that I can take overland and over-road for quite a distance if possible. So you can see I've already done some of the removal. So down in here, there's a gasket that goes down along this entire section here. And up underneath, you can see the same thing up through here. There's another piece of gasket that goes along the front of the door over here. Take a look at that. So it sits right back in here, right back in there. And it goes all the way up the under portion of the door. Then we have gaskets that sit up in here. These are these little guys. So I got all my gaskets from this company, not touting the brand or anything, but they seem to be pretty good quality. This is an L-shaped gasket, you can kind of see there. Has a couple of tabs on the rubber that sit inside of this bracket here. So this is a two-piece gasket up the front of the windshield. You got a smaller piece down here and a longer piece up here. I've already done the passenger side door, and I did have to trim the upper piece down a little bit because it has to fit pretty well up in here against the upper portion of this gasket, and mine was a little bit too tight. So I'll show you that side here in a second. I've got the steel hardtop on my truck, so you've got a gasket across the top of the door that seals against the window, and then one down the back here that seals across the back of the window. So once it's in place, the only opening should be right here. This is where the top and the door come together, and if you look on the other side over there, I think you can see it. See that little space of light behind the window and above the lower door frame? That's the only opening currently in place. Over here is the back side. So you can see this is still assembled here. See how the metal sandwiches that? So the bigger piece folds around the outside, and then the smaller piece folds around the inside. So that keeps it nice and solid here so it doesn't go anywhere. So for each side, you're going to need 9 bolts and nuts. I used star washers in order to keep them locked up where they should be. It does a pretty good job. I'll show you what the other side looks like here in a little bit, but yeah, this is pretty simple to do. Alright, we're cleaned up and painted. So you see I didn't paint the whole thing, I just painted a little bit. But I covered all the way around the door, at least enough that I can get the gaskets in so I don't have to paint next to them again. And same thing up here. Got some nice white going on. Okay, we're going to start by putting in this front upper piece along the windshield, so the one that goes in this bracket here. And what you can see, the upper gasket is going to go right along the top here, so the two need to join up pretty well. So when you buy this, it should have a bit of a bevel to it. If it doesn't, you'll want to cut one into it. And you can see here, if I can align this right, there, see the shape of it? So you see how the front of the gasket has a larger tab on it, and the back of the gasket has a much smaller tab where my fingers are here. So our goal here, we want to leave a little bit of a gap, but we want to place this up in here. And if you can see, you see how I slid that tab into the front of the bracket there? And you see there's a little bit of a space above it. That will allow the upper gasket to seat properly. Then around here, that is not going to work, is it? But what you have back here you see this back portion of the bracket. So then you're going to have to get this rear portion of tab to seat. So that little protrusion along my fingers here, you can just barely see it, that needs to sit into the bracket. So what I use, once I have the front tab in place, then I use a couple standard screwdrivers and just push this back portion in and toward the windshield and just go a little bit at a time. And I work my way down until I have the entire gasket in place. Okay, you see how that is not in there yet? So the next step will be to press on the inner portion of this to try to push this in. And once I get it to start to engage in the bracket, then I'll be able to push it toward the windshield and line it up as you see it down here. So this bottom portion is in position. And I'll just slowly work my way up the bracket until I get all the way to the top, up here, where this will sit right about there. You see I left a gap? And then up top here, I've already placed the top door gasket. So now, what I'm doing on this side, you can see, as we look at this, that that is the angled side. Now you notice it's down below where this metal bracket sits. And I did that on purpose because when you place this, you have to line it up with the hole that's up here, just like so. And if I had left this any higher, then I wouldn't have been able to get the brackets in position to be able to line them up with the holes that are in place there. So what you then do, once you have these brackets put together, the gasket doesn't have any holes in it. So you're going to have to drill or punch holes in the gasket to match up with the brackets that you see. So down here, I've already done that for these three. And I've got one more up here that I still need to drill. So what I'll do is push this back so I don't damage it, and run a 3/16 drill bit through here. And that gives me the hole I need to then push my bolt in place. And then once all the bolts are in, then I can just slide this up into position to line up with the holes you see here, and put a star washer and a nut behind it and tighten it down. So now we have the rear piece in. You can see up here it's pretty tight. There's a little bit of a gap up here where I had some silicone previously, so I'll reseal that here in a little bit. But in general, it looks pretty good. Now, you notice this one too is a little bit long, so I'm going to trim this off to match the bottom of the top here. Alright, so the remaining piece of this will be to add the gasket around the bottom portion of the door. So it's a one-piece gasket going around the back and the underside. You clip down here in the corner to free up the binding around the side here. There's some little brackets to hold things in place that I'll show you. And then there's another piece of gasket that will go along the front of the door up here that just gets stuck in place with silicone. Welcome to the next day. So we have two gaskets to install. One of them goes down the back of the door here and along underneath, and the other one will go up the front side around in here to complete the seal when the door closes. So we have two pieces here. This one is the one that goes on the front. This one is only held in place by a bead of silicone, so there's no hardware or anything to keep it where it belongs. This one is more stiff and longer. This one goes along the back and the bottom, and will clip a relief point where it turns this corner down here. Now this one does have some bracketry to hold it in place. So typically for that one, what I'll do is install a bead of silicone all the way along, down the entire length here, and along the bottom of the door, just to help keep it in place. And you can see right above my finger here, you got a little screw hole. There's another one up top here. See that? And then you have three of them across the bottom of the door as well. Those use these little brackets. So these things will sit in here, just like so, to hold the gasket in place. And it definitely helps because as you open and close this door, that gasket would otherwise have a tendency to stick to this portion here where it seals. So I like to have all of my hardware back in place. So you see I put the door alignment pin back in. It makes it a lot easier. I can put the gasket around that instead of having to worry about placing that after the gasket's in place. So the first thing I'm going to do is install this smaller gasket here. Let me get this out for you. Alright, so the way I'm going to install this, so you can see here, this has a 90-degree shape to it. Let's see if I can get you someplace where you can see that a little better. Sure, that worked. Perfect. Anyway, what I'm going to do is place this on the door so this larger section will sit against the edge here. So I'm going to install it like this. Okay, so we're there. So hopefully you can see up in there, we've got the brackets attached. I know the lighting's not great, but we've got brackets up in there. There's one over here. And along the side here, you got the two brackets out here. And I've got a bead of silicone in, holding it in place. And if we go around to the front, you can see the front gasket stuck in place with silicone. So I try to leave the door open at least until that sets a little bit. And I am going to have to make a little bit of an adjustment down here. This section here isn't quite as tight as I'd like it to be, so I'm going to loosen that last bracket a little bit and pull this gasket a little bit tighter along this edge. Alright, last piece. So what we have up in here, I don't know if you can see this, but just outside of the window you've got this little seal that runs all the way across in through there, all the way across the door. So I have a new one of those also that I need to replace this with. And the trick is, this is held in with little snap clips, and you have to pry it loose and push the other one in. I have not found a way to do that without removing the window. There just isn't enough room in there to work, especially when you get up inside this piece of metal here. And since that can't be removed, it's just too complicated for me to try that. So the method that I've found that works is to take the window off. Now, here's the trick. What you have, you want to lower your window all the way down. Remove your access panel like I've done here. And then you have these two armature arms here. Now there's a pin that sticks through this inner framework, and there's a clip on the back of it. So this is what one of those clips looks like. Okay? This thing is attached to the other side of that pin. It slides on. So what you have to do is push this arm toward the window, pulling against its window frame to release the tension on the clip. Then you have to slide the catch clip off to the side and remove it. I've already done that on this side, which now allows me to pull the pin out of the window. So the problem with this is trying to figure out how these are lined up. So what you have to do is just kind of look around in there, and one side will have this larger hole in it, and the other side has the clip on it. So you should be able to see the hole. If we look back in here, you can see that that side does not have the hole. So if I come around over here, it should. And it's not easy to see, but you can also feel for it, because obviously this clip has a shape to it as well. So you can feel for this behind the window and just make sure that you're sliding it in the right direction. I like rotating them until they're horizontal to slide them off, because that way I can use a screwdriver or a pair of pliers or something like that to help me, and I don't have to do it entirely with my fingers. Got the other clip out, so you can see here this is now loose. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to remove these two little pieces here. So you can see this one much more easily. There are two of these. These are designed to keep your window from rolling up too high. So as you can tell with a truck like this, if the window rolls up too high, then it isn't going to set properly into that channel along the top. Now maybe it's not as important with the soft tops, but with this one, what that means is the window will flare out away from the vehicle when you close the door. Alright, so hopefully you can see what I've done here. I have removed the two top pins and brackets, and the reason I did that was I'm going to have to slide this whole assembly, including these two lower brackets, out through the top of the door. Those little pieces, because they're designed to keep the window from rolling up too high, will also get caught on the inside of the door frame when you try to pull the window out. So you have to remove those to take the window off. Then you see what I did here. I pulled back on these two arms until they were free of the mechanism they were attached to. Then I raised the window just by pushing up on it with my hands and set the arms back in place underneath it. The reason for that is now I can use the armature to help me raise the window up and out of the door. So my next step is going to be to roll the window up and just keep aligning it. Once I lose access to it down here in the access panel, then I'm going to reach up top and grab onto it from here and assist myself in getting it up and out. So I want the mechanism up pretty high, because when I go to set the window back in place, I don't want to set it in and have it fall all the way down. So you'll see how that goes here in a second, but I'll show you once I got the window out. It came out nicely. So sorry about the grass, it's too tall. But you can see here what comes out is the glass along with the surrounding framework. So here we have those two lower frames that the armature mechanism attached to. And then you also have these window guides along the side here that help keep it rolling straight up and down. So here's the trick. The next step is going to be to remove the old window sweep panel, for lack of a better term. So what we're going to take out is this thing right in here. You can do that by taking your standard screwdriver and just sliding in behind it and prying it loose. There are about, I think, 4 or 5 attachment points back there. One of them is up inside that framework, so that one's a little bit more of a pain to get to. But we're going to remove that, and then once that's done, I'm going to put the new one in. So I'll show you what that looks like after I take this one out. Alright, here's the new piece. So you can see we have these little clips along the back of it here. There are 5 of them. So this has kind of a felt appearance to it, and then it has this gasket across the top. So this will go into the door this way with the gasket up. That's part of what makes this somewhat difficult. It's not a problem, but it is something you have to keep in mind, because this gasket does take up space in the door opening, and you have those pieces of steel under the window that have to be slid back in. So when I put the passenger side one in place, I did have some problems with tearing this gasket a little bit. Hopefully I'll do a little bit better job with this one. The other trick is, because you have to kind of finagle the window around the gasket, it's easier to do if you're standing on the outside of the door. Now with this hardtop in place, I can't just close the door and open everything up, put the window in from above. So what I find works the best is to get a little step ladder, leave the door open about 20-30 degrees, and stand on the outside of the door frame to slide the window in position. So I will put this in place and show you what it looks like once it's in. Okay, well, we have the window sitting on the lift armature. So what I had to do, I started by sliding the inner frame piece in next to the gasket here, and then once I had it in position, then I slid the whole window over and got it in alignment with its track. Then I had to raise that up a little bit so I could seat this side into its track, Then it was necessary to use a standard screwdriver, a long blade standard screwdriver, to pull back on the gasket here and slide it across where these two pieces of frame go. So now it's in a position where it's sitting on the lift arms. So I'm going to slowly lower it down and see if I can get it to take. I may have to do a little adjustment right here where this piece is probably going to catch on the window itself. So we'll see how it goes. Alright, everything's back in place. The clips are on the other side. We have the two window stops back in place at the orientation that they were when I first took them off. So I'm going to roll the window up and try closing the door and see how well it seals. There we go. Okay, I don't want to close it all the way because I'm still waiting on silicone to dry. But let's take a look up here. Alright, the front is a good seal. Looks like the rear could come up more, but based on where that stop is, there's no way I can make that happen. So this will do. I should put it right back where it was. Alright, I think we're good. Alright, access panel's back in place. The window operates normally. All gaskets are installed. And leave the door open a little bit longer. Hopefully the wind doesn't blow it closed. Just let that silicone, especially along the front edge, seal a little bit more. Vacuumed up my mess. So I will add a little bit more silicone just up in the corners. So up in that front corner up there, you can just see it right there where the windshield and the top come together. I'll put a little bead of silicone in that corner. And same thing back here up in the top corner of the door. Put a little bit up in there as well, just to make sure that I don't have an air leak in there. Yes, I know, military truck. But, you know, if it's easy to do, why not? So, this has been the method for replacing the door gaskets on an 800 series military 5-ton. I'm told it's the same cab as the M35 series deuce and a half and the M54 series early 5-tons. Please, if anybody knows otherwise, let me know. Please mention in the comments. But as far as I know, this same technique, the same gaskets will work for all of those trucks up through the 800 series. Obviously the 900 series is a different cab, so that one will be a little bit different. But anyway, hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you over the next horizon.